Today is the day I hope to start bending this Wonky Yew stave. But first, I've got to check to see whether or not it's dry enough. This is a digital moisture meter, really useful for checking the moisture levels in bow staves. I've been taking readings up and down the length of this bow stave using the moisture meter, the aim being to get an average reading of around about 10% before I start fully bending this bow. Now these things are fallible and the results easily misinterpreted. They measure the moisture only at the surface, so deeper in the wood it may be much wetter, but I still find them really handy for monitoring the progress as the stave dries. Just over 10%. I can now find out whether this bow will bend or break. Okay, this is make or break for this Wonky Yew stave. Just a few gentle pulls to start with, to see where it's stiff and to see where it's weak. Here we go. Well, at first bend at least it didn't break, but to some extent that should be expected. It's yew, a really elastic wood. The danger for me and for it will come later. So, as I suspected, the thick end of this branch is the left hand side of the bow, and you can see it's totally and utterly stiff. So the first place I've got to start work on is there. Each time that I remove wood from the belly and the sides of this wonky stave, I have to put it back on the tiller and exercise it 20 or 30 times to allow those changes in thickness to take effect. Even after removing lots and lots of wood from that left limb, it's still really stiff. It's going to need a lot more work before it starts to bend. Navigating around all these knots and bumps make this a very time-consuming process. This is the 8th time that bow has come off the tiller to have more wood removed. It's still an absolutely horrible shape, but that left limb is now beginning to bend. These misaligned tips are causing the bow to twist when it's on the tiller, with a result that you've just seen, so a bit more heat bending. Okay, so that's one of the tips, straightened out a little bit more to try to bring the string so it falls straight across the handle. Tomorrow I try to straighten this end. So that's about 2 days since the last heat bending of this Wonky Yew stave, and all I can say is it's a little bit less wonky than it was. Okay, now I'm going to resume bending this Wonky Longbow stave with the aim as quickly as possible to see whether I can get a string on this bow. So this is the point where I shorten the string, and then the bow will be under permanent tension. It's really only at that point that you can see the proper shape of the bow. So the normal brace height of a longbow is around about that, which in my case is 6 inches. That's the distance from the belly of the bow to the string. So it's back on the tiller for my Wonky Yew to see whether I can get it to bend some more. The baffling thing about this wonky piece of yew is that the more it's bent, the more it looks like a bow. And I think that's testament to the properties of yew as a wood, rather than my skill as a bowyer. So now the bow is braced at 6 inches, and this is what it looks like when drawn back 24 inches. It sort of vaguely resembles a longbow. So that's my Wonky Yew now bending back to 27 inches where it's drawing about 50 pounds. But I've got a problem, and it's here. This is where the bow naturally bends towards the archer. And it means when you look at the bow when it's fully braced, like it is now, it still looks wonky. But the odd thing is, you can still do this with it. And then it doesn't look quite so wonky. My ideal draw length is 28 inches, but I'd like to take this bow perhaps just an inch or so further, maybe to 29 or 30 inches, where I'll measure the draw weight, and then I think I will leave it there. Here we go, all the way back to about 29 inches. So, as you and I can see, this bow is by no means perfectly tillered, but it's all the way back now to 29 inches, which just goes to show how remarkable a wood yew is for bow making. It lets beginners and novices like me get away almost with murder, because now I have my 10th longbow. I'm going to start thinning the tips and finishing this bow off right now. When I started making this bow, I asked myself a question. Could I make a good bow out of a bad piece of wood? And the honest answer is no, this is not an especially good bow. Perhaps a better question to have asked myself is this: is it worthwhile for a novice to spend hours and hours on a wonky stave? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes, because all the hours I've spent on this bow have been absolutely worthwhile. They've boosted my bow making confidence no end, and working on this bow has reminded me that care, patience and working slowly will yield a bow from almost any piece of wood. So this is my Wonky Yew Longbow, 77.5 inches knock to knock, 55 pounds at 29 inches draw length. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.